So this is our introduction to Vue.js. Vue.js is a JavaScript framework, like it says here at the website. I'm at vuejs.org, and we're going to review how to use Vue. So I would encourage you to watch this video that says why use Vue, but what I'm going to do is get you started with the icon that says Get Started. And so when we click on the Get Started, the first thing I want to draw your attention to is when you first come up to this web page, look at the toggle button here. It'll default to this option called composition, and we're going to be using options. And the reason why we're using options is a little bit more similar to what we've been doing all semester. So this is going to be a nice, intuitive, easy transition between what we've been doing in vanilla JavaScript to moving into a framework. In this case, we're going to be using Vue. The next item I want to draw to your attention is going to be here in the menu, and we're going to go to this Quick Start option. And I want to make sure that you are noticing in this particular quick Start, there is multiple ways for us to create a Vue application. So we could be using NPM, and we'll do that later, but what we're going to be doing right now is using Vue from a CDN. And there's another option down here if you scroll further enough, and it talks about using the ES module build. But we're going to be doing the second option, using Vue from the CDN. And so we will be able to, or we will, utilize a link to a CDN, and then this is the initial build. This is how we start off our Vue apps. And so this link is already included in this snippet of code. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and copy this, and I'm going to bring up Visual Studio Code. And here in Visual Studio Code then, I'll create an index.html page and exclamation point and tab. I'll paste that snippet of code in here and make sure to put the CDN link in the head tag. And this will be the beginnings of any of our Vue apps that we're creating here in the HTML page. So here's a quick overview of what we've just created. I'll close this up and bring my page into my browser window here. Let me put these side by side. So what we've created here in this skeleton or initial snippet is we have a div, and this div has an ID of app. Now that ID can be anything you want. An ID is an ID. But what is important is that everything that is inside our div that I've labeled app, so let me just kind of spread this out for you to see it. Everything that is in this div is where all of my Vue JavaScript framework resides. In other words, I have, and I'll do this in detail here in a minute, you see this double curly braces message. Message is displaying this data that is this like a variable. It's a key value pair. You should recognize that it's an object. So whatever is in this string is what's being displayed here in the curly braces, which is what's being displayed here in my web page. So if I did not have this curly braces inside the app where my Vue lives, I'm going to put it outside of that app, then you're going to see literally the curly braces, because Vue is not looking outside of this div, it's looking inside of that div. And how does it know to look there? Well, that's what this piece is right here. So after we've created our Vue instance, and I'll walk through that in a minute, we're telling Vue, mount all of your Vue data inside the ID that I've called app. So you notice the hashtag app. So if I wanted to word this something different, app's kind of the convention, but if I had something in like my initials, for example, or my nickname, Kier, then this would work as well. It doesn't make sense for this scenario, but that is what we would, that's where the link is. So I'm going to go back to the word app because that's kind of the standard, and recognize then that app is everything that I want to be viewed, V-U-E, viewed, is going to be inside that open and close div tag that has the ID app in it. This certainly works, but another way that you're going to see this written is similar to this. So I'm going to take Vue, and I'm going to put Vue in front. So create app is a method of the Vue object. So we're creating an object here. I'm going to also assign it to a variable. Now the fact that this is app is not the fact that these all have to be named the same thing. It's just a convention that they are. So again, this variable could be whatever you want it to be. It doesn't have to match these two, but remember this ID and this ID have to match. So this is another way that you'll see the syntax written. So just let me prove to the fact that it did in fact work, and I still have hello view showing up. And I'll make a third explanation point just to make sure that everything is still working the way I'd expected it to. And sure enough, I guess a second explanation point, and there's a second explanation point. So a final conversation of what's going on here that I'm going to complete this video with is, let's look at what we're actually doing here. So we're using create app, which is a method of the view object. We're creating an object that is eventually going to be putting into our app variable. And so this method then, which is in my open and close yellow parentheses, receives an object. It's expecting an object, and you can see that object because of the purple curly braces that I've highlighted here. So in this object, we're going to create many different things as we progress with these videos. But the first member that we have utilized, not that it's necessarily expecting, but that we have put into our object, is a data method. So data is a mandatory word if we're going to create some variables that are going to store values. In this case, we've basically created a variable called message that's storing our string that we're putting into our app DOM. So the data is a method. This method is returning an object. And I know that's a lot of stuff to twist your tongue around, but that's why we've been working on this terminology all semester. So now it's sort of, when I throw all of this at you, hopefully it's kind of resonating with things that we've already been talking about. So a data method is going to return an object of key value pairs that are going to represent our variables. And so we'll see further how we'll see some other things that are sent into our object, but this is just sort of a basic starting of our app, which is a view object, which is being mounted into our div via the ID. That's a mouthful. All right, so let's see some more videos on how we're going to be able to implement all of this. Oops, I had another thought before I finish this video, and that is we're going to definitely want to install the dev tools for our for Vue. And what that means is I'm in a browser and I just typed in Vue.js dev tool and Google's came up. I'm in Firefox, so I'm also going to look for one for Firefox and see if I have one available, Firefox. And there's one for Firefox. So what's going to happen is you're going to install, or should install, this dev tool. I'm going to add mine to Firefox and go ahead and add. And obviously if you're in Chrome, use Chrome. And the purpose of that is, so I'm going to go back into, notice now I have this little grayed out V on top of my browser toolbar here. So what will happen is a development tool that we can use in Vue has now been installed. So I'm going to right click and go into my dev tools here, and you should see that now that I've refreshed the page, see that Vue is now showing up. So this is going to give us some extra troubleshooting abilities in our Vue instance. So I'm going to click on that, and you should see that we have a root project started. It sees that our data and it sees our message. And here's kind of the cool thing. So, and we'll learn what this all means in a minute, but I'm going to change this to Vue JS, and you're going to see that it's going to update our DOM accordingly. So definitely get one of those dev tools installed, no matter if you're in Firefox or in Chrome. Ideally, you're working in one of those two browsers at this point. And let's move on to the next series of videos.